Hi guys, welcome to the first video in my new series of debunking aerial myths. So in this first video, I'm going to be talking about body proportions and how they impact our ability to learn skills as an aerialist. Hi, my name is Verity. I am an online strength and conditioning coach specializing in supporting aerialists to achieve the skills that matter to them. There is a belief that with a lot of skills, it's simply a case of if we want to achieve them and we are finding them difficult, we're just not working hard enough. And that is oftentimes not the case, especially when it comes to body proportions. So, what does body proportions even mean? Well, this is essentially the length of your limbs and the length of your torso, and then the length of these different parts of your body in relation to each other. We can have a range of different body proportions, for example, long and short arms, long or short torso, long or short legs, and then any combination of the three. Depending on which combination you have, this is going to impact whether some skills come more easily and whether some skills are more challenging. It simply just is not factually correct that length of your limbs and length of your torso does not impact aerial. It absolutely 100,000% does. So if you've ever been working on a skill and you're looking around and you're thinking, everybody else can do this, but I can't, what's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. You just probably have an anatomical disadvantage. So generally, shorter limbs or shorter levers can make a lot of movement easier because there is less weight for you to maneuver around and there is less distance for your limbs to travel. Whereas longer levers can make things significantly more challenging because longer levers are heavier, and obviously there is more distance between your center of gravity and where your levers end. So there is a bigger pathway that your limbs have to travel through in order to get from A to B. It can also sometimes be easier to be more explosive if you have shorter limbs because again, your body doesn't have to travel as far and there is less weight to maneuver around. And then we also have the length of your torso. You might have really long arms and legs and a very short torso, and that's going to impact your ability to do certain movements. Or you might have a very long spine, and that will be an advantage for some things and a disadvantage for others. So I want to give you some real examples, and I'm going to use myself to demonstrate. I have what I would describe quite unique proportions, and I haven't come across many people with the same kind of proportions as me, but I have very long arms, a very long spine, and then in proportion to my arms and my torso, my legs are actually short. Like my legs are quite short, and I think I look shorter in videos than I actually am because of my proportions. So because I have long arms, a long spine, and short legs, forward folding and compression exercises come quite naturally to me. I obviously spend a lot of time training that stuff because I really enjoy it, but I also have an anatomical advantage. My legs are not very heavy because they're not very long, and I have a lot of strength in my upper body and my torso. So you can see here, when it comes to lifting my legs and being able to fit my feet underneath the bar, that is actually because of my proportions. Like, yes, I have the strength to do the movement, but the fact that my feet and legs will fit under the bar like that is simply because of the length of all of my limbs and my torso. If we took somebody the same height as me with the same arm length, but their torso was shorter and their legs were longer, so their hip hinge happened higher up their body, their feet and ankles would hit the bar. And this is what people don't seem to realize, is that in some cases, the solution to being able to do a movement is chopping off your feet, which we're obviously not going to do, right? But there are certain movements where you physically cannot fit or you physically cannot complete the movement in the same way as somebody else because of body proportions. So movements that come easy to me because of my proportions are things like straight arm inverts, toes to bar, piking and tucking under the bar, and then even some calisthenics movements like front lever or back lever, but it's not all fun and games. There are a lot of movements where I find them more challenging because of my long spine. So an example would be anything that is super back bendy. In order for me to get a really nice back bend, I basically have to get my spine to bend more and travel further because the distance between my head and my hips is greater than somebody with a shorter torso. I also find things like front balance extremely difficult because if the bar is on my hips, there is a lot more weight above the bar than there is below the bar. Like, I am naturally top heavy. I have a lot of muscle in my arms and shoulders. So if you combine that with the length of my torso, it makes front balance extremely tricky for me to hold. I'm not somebody where I've just been able to find that position and sit there comfortably. Even with my legs at an angle down towards the floor, I still find it hard to hold, and I have to be very, very active through my spine to have any real chance of holding it. I certainly can't hold that position comfortably with my arms out in front of me. They have to be here, or even what I want to do is have them behind me to help keep the weight back. That is another exercise that I find hard. Another movement that I found, which is an excellent example of something that my body proportions do not work for, is a handstand on rope. And I'm sure that with time and with practice, this is a skill that I will be able to achieve. It doesn't feel like it's something that I'm never going to be able to do or that it's out of reach. But the strength to hold this is not my issue. Like, my upper body, one arm pulling and one arm pushing feels pretty solid. That's not something that I find particularly hard. But you'll see in this video that because my spine is so long, a lot of the weight is over this side, right? Like, a lot of the weight is the opposite side to where my legs are going. And so I really need to have more back bend. So there is a mobility issue going on here as well. I need to have more back bend so that I can get my legs basically closer to a horizontal position so that there is more weight further away from my center of gravity on the other side of the rope. And because my legs are short, they don't immediately create the weight that I need to be able to hold this position. So this is just another example of where my long torso is creating too much weight over one side of the equipment, and my legs are not creating enough because they're not long enough. And because of my mobility and the fact that I just have a long spine, I can't get my legs at the right angle to create a balance of weight over the other side of the rope. And so I want to just show you this because this is something that I'm going to struggle with until I improve my mobility and figure out how to achieve the position where I feel super balanced and I can hold myself. And there are a lot of other movements that I anticipate I'm going to come across where a similar issue is going to arise. And then there will be other movements that I learn and they'll feel really straightforward and easy. Like, a single arm straight arm invert feels more possible to me than achieving the handstand on rope. And I would argue that the handstand on rope is an easier position to hold. Like, that's an easier skill than a single arm straight arm invert. But that should really give you an idea of like where my kind of strengths lie and where my weaknesses lie when it comes to skills that are impacted by my body proportion. And so it's not to say I can't train movements that include spine extension and back bending. I just need to spend more time working on the mobility side of things to make that stuff more accessible. And in contrast to that, somebody with longer levers wanting to work on inverts and leg lifts and things like that, it's not impossible to be able to achieve the movement, but it's just going to require a bit more specific strength training in order for them to achieve that. The journey of achieving the skill is going to be a little bit trickier. And this again is different to somebody who, for example, has short arms that don't allow them to fit to be able to do certain movements, or longer legs than arms that also don't allow them to be able to do certain movements. One of my values as a coach is to make aerial accessible for everybody. And people's strengths and weaknesses are going to look different based on a variety of different factors. And limb length, in fact, your entire set of body proportion is just one of these factors that is going to influence how you experience learning different skills. Whether you are able to learn different skills, for example, tuck under the bar is physically impossible for some people simply because they don't fit. And there's not anything you can do about that. It's not a strength issue, it's not a mobility issue, it's because of body proportion. Also, who cares if you can't tuck under the bar? You can get on the apparatus a million other ways, but that's a different video. And so, if people's individual needs are not taken into consideration, first of all, aerial is going to be inaccessible to them when it comes to certain skills, and B, it's going to make them feel like they're failing and they're doing something wrong, when in fact the issue is something that they can't actually do anything about. If you have long limbs, you have long limbs, and if you have short limbs, you have short limbs. And so I feel like as a coach, it's important to be able to support each of these different bodies. And we should understand that somebody who has certain proportions might struggle with X, and we can give them Y instead. Or somebody who has certain proportions is going to find this easier, and so we can give them something that's a bit more challenging because of their anatomy. When I'm working with people that have a slightly unique set of body proportions, I always will try and make sure that the training and the drills I give them is adapted to that. So I'm not just trying to send them off with the same kind of cookie cutter program and rules that I would give to somebody else with different body proportions. And this is why I wanted to talk about this topic, because I really believe that aerial can be for everybody, and that if you can't do a certain skill because of a physical difference or imbalance, or because you've had an injury, or because you have different body proportions, unless it's something you personally feel you really need for your own kind of progress and success in aerial, it literally doesn't matter. Like, nobody even cares. It's just us. We care about what we can do, and we obviously want to get better. But I think there needs to be more permission in aerial, that you don't have to meet a set of standards, and you don't have to achieve a set of skills in order to be an aerialist. Like, your aerial practice is for you, and it's about what you want to achieve because that's what's important to you. I think it's very dangerous to accuse people of just not trying hard enough or not being strong enough when it comes to a skill that their body is not designed to do. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. And basically, just to summarize what I've been saying, limb length and body proportions absolutely do impact your ability to learn certain skills. Some things will be harder and some things will come a bit easier, and some things might not be possible at all. And that's completely fine. Really, we want to find a way to train aerial that feels good for our body and work with what we do have. And it may be that there are certain skills where you just have to understand that either they're not worth pursuing because of how much hard work it would be, or you understand that you do have to put that extra work in that somebody else maybe doesn't because of the length of your limbs or your torso. And if you have any thoughts on this, feel free to share in the comments. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.